Hey mamas, it's your CajunStork here, Midwife Kyra. I believe in truly natural birth because I know it makes for better birth experiences. Consider subscribing to my channel and joining in today's conversation about caffeine use in pregnancy. So I was actually making an attempt to do a Facebook Live, and this will be my first YouTube Live. So hopefully this goes as planned. This is my new little coffee cup. I think it might be backwards for you because I'm shooting on an iPad. It says "Talk Birthy to Me." It was a client gift given to me recently. Now, as a midwife, if you know me, you see that I almost always have a cup of coffee in my hand. So trust me when I tell you that I know exactly how you guys feel when I give you guys the information I'm about to give you today. So let's talk a little bit about caffeine use in pregnancy. Now, if you Google it, you're going to come across a lot of information that is just repetitive over and over. And I want to give you guys a unique midwifery-based perspective on caffeine use in pregnancy so that you can make an informed decision. So I want to start off by saying caffeine is baby's first drug in most instances. It's either caffeine or alcohol, but typically caffeine is considered baby's first drug. Okay, see, technical difficulties. Okay, here we go. So, over 70% of pregnant women are using caffeine at the onset of their pregnancy and continue to use that throughout their pregnancy. It is the most widely consumed drug in the world, and I would consider it to be the most normalized drug in the world. Why do we like caffeine? I mean, I'm a midwife. I know why I like caffeine, but why do you like caffeine? Chances are you like caffeine because it gives you that alert feeling, it gives you energy, physical activity, like alerts your brain and makes you feel like you can do more physical activity, and sometimes it may even increase your attention span. Being a new mom, these things are really important for us to function, and I come across a lot of parents who are pregnant with number 2 or number 3, and no, I'm doing a live right now. Sorry, I'm actually shooting a live. Okay, so coming across parents who are pregnant with baby number 2 or baby number 3, and they're using caffeine so that they can take care of baby number 1. And so caffeine is really a help to new moms, and I don't take that lightly, both being a mom myself and also having been pregnant while I was attending births. I realize how important caffeine can be to us. How does it work? Caffeine is actually considered a psychoactive drug, which means it alters our brain function. It alters our perception, it alters our mood, and it alters our consciousness, which again, it makes us feel more awake. I thought this was really interesting though. I wanted to share with you guys. There's some new studies coming out that link family histories of alcoholism to family history of caffeine dependence, and starting to think that caffeine dependence is becoming more genetic than it is social or survival, as I like to think, being a midwife who drinks quite a bit of coffee. So I thought it was really cool that they said that these two things were related. And out of all the people that they did in this study, where people without a history of alcoholism and people without a history of caffeine dependence, they found a direct correlation between alcoholism and caffeine dependence based in genetic family history. I thought it was also really cool, just a little side fun fact, that of these women, 50% of those women who are caffeine dependent and have a family history of alcoholism are 9 times more likely to have been smokers before their pregnancy. So I thought that was really interesting. And so I want you to think about that as I'm talking to you guys about caffeine in pregnancy here in the next couple of minutes, because it really is going to be a tough decision, I think, after I give you guys the information I want to give you today. Believe it or not, well, I believe it, caffeine dependent women are less likely to abstain from caffeine during pregnancy than the average woman. So many women give up or reduce caffeine in pregnancy, but caffeine dependent women often won't give it up at all. So I found that to be very interesting as well. So I think we forget though, the first thing you're gonna think about when I'm talking about caffeine is coffee. But there's way more things that caffeine is in. Sweet tea, for example. My son cut these out for me to use for today. Sweet tea, for example, I'm going to talk about the dosages of caffeine in just a few minutes, but sweet tea, of course, coffee. But did you know that the amount of caffeine in your coffee depends on not just the bean, but also how it's brewed? Chocolate. What midwife doesn't survive on caffeine from coffee and chocolate? Chocolate has caffeine in it. Cocoa beans have caffeine in them naturally. Tea. So red raspberry leaf tea that you hear me talk about very often does not have caffeine in it. But black tea, green tea, and other medicinal teas have caffeine in it. And of course, the infamous energy drinks. Energy drinks have caffeine in it. Each one of them is different. And different types of caffeine too. I was reading today that some energy drinks pull caffeine from plant extracts and put it in their drink. But the one energy drink I found that has the most caffeine is 5-Hour Energy, way more than your daily recommended amount during pregnancy. So what is the daily recommended amount during pregnancy? Because obviously you're probably thinking, Kyra, this isn't realistic to cut out all caffeine in pregnancy if it's in that many things. So most studies, particularly organizations like the World Health Organization, would recommend that you limit your caffeine to 200 milligrams a day throughout your pregnancy. Now, I saw some studies that said 300 milligrams a day, but I'm going to stick to the 200 milligrams a day because I found that there were more studies done on that. How much is 200 milligrams a day? Well, in general, it would be 1 to 2 cups of coffee, depending on the way that you have it brewed. So we'll, for example, coffee versus like a latte, or coffee versus like a cappuccino. Coffee has more caffeine. A cold drip coffee that you get at like those fancy coffee shops, they have higher caffeine than just a standard cup of coffee that you would do at home. A French press also puts more caffeine in your cup than the cup that you would just make on a typical pot at home. Or one 12-ounce coffee, which could be like a Starbucks, for example, or McDonald's. A 12-ounce, one of those has your daily caffeine limit in a day. One trick that I want to give you guys is something that I had done while I was pregnant. And because as a midwife, we work crazy hours, and you never know if I have my 2 cups a day in the morning to start my day, and now I have a birth in the middle of the night and I need another cup. One way I was trying to be more conservative in my pregnancy is I switched over to half-calf coffee. Now in a couple of minutes, I'm going to talk to you guys about decaf and how to find a healthy decaf, but also it may not be quite what you think. So we're going to touch more on that in just a couple of minutes. But if you're gonna do a half-calf coffee, I strongly recommend that you would consider an organic half-calf coffee. This is half the amount of caffeine in every cup, so you can feel a little less guilty and still have that caffeine that you need to get through your day. Something so important that I tell every single one of my clients. First of all, this midwife is not a stickler for caffeine. However, after what I learned today to research for this video, I might be changing my stance on that a little bit. But the one thing I tell all my clients is caffeine should only be taken in pregnancy in the form of teas, coffees, or chocolate. It is very important that we avoid sodas and energy drinks during pregnancy because not only are they full of sugar or artificial sweeteners, but they have no nutritional value and often have ingredients like caramel color that are just toxic for your body. And so if you're going to do caffeine, I want you guys to have clean caffeine, tea, coffee, or soda. Nope, see, I take that back. Tea, coffee, or chocolate, not soda. So how does caffeine work? Caffeine blocks receptors in your brain that are a natural part of your body, your physiology, that makes you feel tired. And because it's blocking, it's increasing your mood, it's increasing your blood sugar levels, and it helps you feel less sleepy. In many neurological diseases, such as Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's disease, caffeine can be used to improve symptoms of some of these diseases. But what most people don't realize, particularly in a society where we have adrenal burnout and high anxiety, is that caffeine can interfere with your sleep. It can increase your anxiety. It can cause rapid or fast respirations, a fast or even an irregular heartbeat. And something that's really important for my pregnant mamas to know is caffeine consumption, particularly in coffee, can decrease your ability to absorb iron. So if you're anemic, coffee could actually be preventing you from absorbing the iron that you need. When you drink a cup of coffee, for the record, this is kombucha right now because it's 6 o'clock at night. But when you drink a cup of coffee, within 45 minutes, 99% of the caffeine is being metabolized in your body. Now, the amount of time it takes for your body to metabolize caffeine is different for everyone. On average, 3 to 7 hours. So that 2 o'clock crash that you feel in the afternoon may actually be caffeine crashing and not necessarily like a normal 2 o'clock crash. And there are contributing factors that are important that would determine how you metabolize coffee, such as genetics, other medications that may have caffeine, caffeine's in some medications, your weight, your altitude, and your age. But nothing is a contributing factor as high as pregnancy. Pregnancy is a huge contributing factor to your ability to metabolize caffeine. In fact, there's so many physiological changes going on in your pregnancy that your ability to metabolize pregnancy in your 3rd trimester is so slow that it could take up to 80 hours. I read 92 hours before that amount of caffeine actually leaves your body. So the half-life, the amount of time it takes for half of that caffeine to leave your body, it increases with each trimester. And that caffeine is being passed to your baby through the placenta, through the umbilical cord, and your baby does not have enzymes that break down caffeine. So not only is it slower for you, and if you drink a cup of coffee a day, you're having the snowball effect of caffeine buildup in your body, but now your baby can't metabolize it, and they've even found caffeine floating around in amniotic fluid. So this is a big deal. It's a bigger deal than we thought it was. Babies have no enzymes for metabolism. So what that means is, if you drink caffeine on a Friday morning, and only 1 cup, your baby is not sober from this drug until Monday afternoon. Now, how many of us are drinking a cup or 2 a day? Or dark chocolate every day? Many of us. So we need to think about that. This is a big deal. It could take 80 hours before this is cleared from our system. Now, there's some studies that are done. The one that I just really want to bring up in this moment is that the effects on the baby. In this case, I'm going to call it the fetus, which I really hate to use that term because they're babies. But fetus is the term that we're going to use so I can talk about while it's in your uterus and not in your arms while you're breastfeeding, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes. The study says that uterine receptivity, your uterus's ability to receive the egg that's fertilized, and the ability of the fertilized egg to implant in the uterine wall to maintain a pregnancy are directly affected by caffeine. And they also said that on studies on mice, that when we introduce caffeine in sensitive windows of growth of the baby, that we created epigenetic changes in the fetus that caused adult onset diseases in subsequent generations, which means I drank coffee in my pregnancy, not knowing this for the record, and have possibly caused adult onset diseases for my children and my grandchildren because of my choice to drink caffeine every day. Thankfully, I switched to half calf, but still, you know, this was stuff that I didn't know. And once we know better, we do better, right? So again, this is just something really important to consider. Other effects on the fetus. 2 cups a day not only affected placental function, but those babies who were attached to that placenta later had cardiovascular complications in adulthood. Again, this study was done in mice. Now, we saw this though during the Spanish flu. The Spanish flu created some kind of placental anomaly, some kind of placental implantation issues that led that generation to have cardiovascular disease at a higher rate than normal. And they're actually starting to suspect this as a possibility with COVID right now too. So this actually makes perfect sense. But other things that you need to know about caffeine is that it has been linked to, it's called IUGR. It means intrauterine growth restriction or low birth weight. And multiple studies have linked caffeine use excessive, meaning more than 400 milligrams a day before pregnancy, to frequent miscarriage. So I don't think it's safe to say anymore that this drug is completely harmless, although the World Health Organization and ACOG both say that it is safe to have up to 200 milligrams of coffee a day. I think we need to be considering maybe decreasing or cutting it out altogether now that we know better, because we're going to do better. What about effects for the baby? 2 cups a day of coffee every day in pregnancy gave children, let's see, at the age of 5, they were 2 times higher or 2 times more likely to have cognitive impairment and lower IQs. This was not seen if mom was drinking 100 milligrams a day of coffee. But if she was drinking 200 milligrams a day of coffee, her baby at 5 years old had lower IQs. It's also linked to overweight children and, again, cognitive impairments. And as we all know, the reason why we drink coffee is to help us stay awake. Coffee does interfere with sleep, not just for newborns, but also for the drinker themselves. So how much is too much? Like I said, the World Health Organization recommends 200 milligrams a day or less, and they do not consider it harmful for pregnancy. Meanwhile, the Royal College of Midwives in the UK believes that we need to be revisiting this guideline because there are studies suggesting over and over again that caffeine may not be the harmless drug that we thought it was. Now, are you going to die from it? No. In fact, I read today that you won't die until you have 10 grams of caffeine. This is like 50 to 100 cups in a day. So no, it won't kill you, but it doesn't mean it's not harmful for your health. And again, metabolizing caffeine changes from person to person, but because the baby cannot process caffeine, the further along you are in your pregnancy, the more caffeine your baby is being exposed to, and they're not able to digest it. So how much caffeine is in the stuff that we really love? So like I said, a regular cup of coffee is 95 to 100 grams a cup. If you're doing half calf, you can break that in half. If you're having it slow dripped, it's on the higher end. Chocolate. The darker the chocolate, the more caffeine. And this is because caffeine is found in cocoa beans. I saw anywhere from 3 to 35 milligrams depending on the chocolate. I would recommend that you look up the chocolate that you like. And if I'm not mistaken, I think good quality, like organic chocolates, they may even tell you the caffeine content. Let me know in the comments below if you know. I think they even tell you the caffeine content. But what I found interesting is none of the coffee that I researched for this video does tell you the caffeine content. It tells you the serving size, and believe it or not, some of the serving sizes were 6 ounces, not 8 ounces like we're talking about here. Sweet tea. 40 to 150 milligrams per 8 ounces. Very few people drink 8 ounces of sweet tea. Typically they drink more. So if you have a cup of coffee and a sweet tea in the same day, besides the amount of sugar that you're having, which your midwife doesn't love, you're taking in too much caffeine. You need to back off. And what happens if you decide to eat chocolate as a midnight, not the energy drink, the chocolate as a midnight snack? Now you've got way more than the recommended amount of caffeine intake that is considered, although I don't agree, safe for your pregnancy. And a cup of tea, black tea, green tea. It says black tea is 40 milligrams per 8 ounces. This says 26 milligrams. Black tea is one of the most common teas drinking in the European studies. In the American studies, it's coffee, because we just love coffee in America. That's why there's a Starbucks on every corner. And I'll post some cute little graphics on my YouTube page and also on my Facebook page for you guys to see if you're looking up like how much caffeine does a Dr. Pepper have, for example, or a soda or an energy drink. All of those things are easy to find now, and I'm going to post those on my pages so you can find that information. Now, what about decaf? So the secret I told you guys that in the advertisement for this video that I'll give you is that most of the time, even though you see this midwife with a cup of coffee, at the birth center, at the natural birth house, we drink decaf or half calf, usually decaf. In fact, it's pretty funny because when we put half calf or regular caffeine in our coffee, we label it so nobody freaks out because most of us are drinking 2 to 4 cups a day of coffee at the birth center. So we switched to decaf. Decaf is not completely decaffeinated. 97% of caffeine is removed from decaf, but it still has anywhere from 3 to 13 and sometimes even 15 milligrams of caffeine per cup. Now, something physiologically happened for me after giving birth to my second one, where when I was pregnant for him, I switched to half calf because I needed to because of the amount of or frequency that I was drinking coffee in the pregnancy. But since giving birth to him, I've suddenly become very intolerant to caffeine. In fact, if I have too much caffeine, I'll get palpitations, like extra heartbeats. So I switched to decaf because it has enough caffeine to give me the buzz that I need at 10 milligrams, not 90, but it's not completely decaffeinated. And so if you're looking for a good alternative to caffeine, like me, I love the social habit of coffee drinking. It's something as a Cajun we did from our childhood. We had coffee milk with our grandparents and our parents. And so this has become kind of part of my culture in South Louisiana. If you're like me, half calf or decaf is the way to go. The thing about decaf, however, is that there are 4 different ways that we can make coffee decaffeinated. 2 of the ways are chemicals, harmful chemicals that are harmful to your body. Other ways, like this one is Swiss water decaffeinated. It's called the hot water or Swiss water process. And if you're looking here, this is from Whole Foods. I think it might be backwards on your screen, I'm sorry, but this is Whole Foods 365 buzz-free decaf, and it says right here the method of decaffeination process that they did. This is just a standard hot water, well, not standard, it's very fancy, but a hot water process that they remove the caffeine without adding chemicals to your caffeine, to your coffee to do that. And so if you're looking for a good quality decaf, you want to do a Swiss water process decaffeinated coffee. And remember, coffee amounts are not listed on the label, so make sure you're buying a brand that you can trust. And personally, I would recommend organic if you're drinking coffee every day. Anything that you do every day in your pregnancy, if there's you juice celery, or you eat kale, or you drink coffee, you need to make sure it's organic. Now, what about breastfeeding? I'm going to wrap this up with breastfeeding here. So about 15 minutes after mom consumes coffee or caffeine, breast milk has caffeine in it, and it reaches its maximum concentration about an hour after mom starts to consume. But only 1 to 3% of the amount of caffeine actually reaches the baby. Now, the younger the baby, just like babies in the womb, the fetus cannot metabolize coffee or caffeine in the womb. Once born, the younger the baby, the less ability to metabolize caffeine. And you'll know your baby's sensitive to caffeine. They're grumpy, they're moody, they're not sleeping well, they're showing signs of anxiety or irritability. And for moms who are big coffee drinkers in pregnancy, like the ones I spoke about earlier, where 50% of pregnant women who are caffeine dependent don't give up or even drink the recommended amounts. They usually drink double the recommended amounts. Their babies can be born with tremors. So this is a big deal. However, as your baby gets older, they're more they're better equipped to metabolize caffeine, and they do. 3 to 5 month old babies, it takes them 14 hours to metabolize caffeine. And if you remember a few minutes ago, I said for us, it's like 3 to 7 hours. 6 months old, it's only 2 hours, sometimes 3 to metabolize caffeine. But your newborn takes 97.5 hours to process 1 cup of coffee. So my midwife tip to you that I tell all of my mamas is, although I'm not a stickler for caffeine, whatever you do in your pregnancy, you need to be doing when you're breastfeeding. So if you raised your baby on caffeine, I would recommend you stay on caffeine because we don't want our baby having caffeine withdrawals. But vice versa. If you didn't drink caffeine in your pregnancy, you were abstinent from caffeine, especially after watching this video, and now you're postpartum and you're trying to survive the early newborn phases and you need coffee because, my God, who doesn't with newborn babies? Keep in mind, it's going to take your newborn 97 hours to process caffeine before they're sober. So you drink coffee on a Friday and your baby could be irritated till Tuesday or Monday. So keep this in mind if when you're drinking coffee. Keep doing what you're doing while you're pregnant. If you're having half calf while you're pregnant, keep it up postpartum. You don't want a baby going through withdrawals either. That's no fun. And again, babies, so I said earlier that chronic caffeine intake can decrease your ability to absorb iron. Same thing for breastfeeding. Moms who drink a lot of caffeine, greater 200 milligrams a day or greater, actually have lower iron content in their milk. Now, a little sneaky midwife tip for you is if you do delayed cord clamping at your birth, baby's getting a very good blood transfusion and iron stores that they were supposed to be born with. But still, chronic caffeine, more than 2 cups a day of coffee, 200 milligrams or more, has lower iron concentration in your milk, and nobody wants that. So be mindful of the amount of caffeine you're drinking. So like I said, the Royal College of Midwives says that we might need to revisit current health recommendations concerning pregnant women and caffeine. But I want to know what you think. Now that you've watched this video, do you think caffeine is a safe drug that we can continue in our pregnancy? Do you think maybe now you might switch to half calf or decaf in your pregnancy? Or are you really not worried about it and you think you're going to keep doing the same thing? I really, really want to know. Let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, I will see you guys next Midwife Monday. I appreciate you watching. I'm going to post my videos right here on the screen where you can follow me over there to watch another Midwife Monday video. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. Oh, and I don't know how to end my video. That's funny. Maybe it'll end like this.